And action. Welcome everybody. PnP Weekly episode 182.
So prepared.
Yes, it is 10th of October 2022, and it's getting darker. Leaves are coming down. It's just autumn is here.
The winter is coming.
Winter is coming. Now, this week we have Martin Lingstuyl on. Is that the right way of saying this? Martin Lingstuyl?
Lingstuyl.
Lingstuyl, okay. Joining us on the PnP Weekly, he is a recent Microsoft MVP, 9 days as we're recording this. So got his status on the 1st of October. And he is a Microsoft 365 architect based in the Netherlands. And really good discussion on many things, which we already recorded. And we're doing this intro and outro as a separate recording. Super well prepared of explaining even that. Anyway, so... In the PnP Weekly, I always talk about the latest on Microsoft 365, and we have a visitor like MVP, PM, or Microsoft people or external people from the community to talk about their career development and whatever they actually do for a living. So is that a good way of saying what we do in PnP Weekly?
Yes. Well, we chat. Sometimes we give tips about the weather, seasons of the year, random things.
Sure.
Occasionally, you might learn a thing or two.
Yep, you never know, or at least you will get to know people. So, which is one of the objectives of the show as well. Now, we also cover the articles after the interview. Hashtag PnP Weekly is the one which you should be using in Twitter. So we will find your cool stuff and what you've been writing and publishing for others. But let's jump on the interview with Martin, and we'll come back on the articles right after that. So, welcome, Martin, and thank you for joining on the PnP Weekly, episode 182. Let's start with the basics. Who are you? What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a Microsoft 365 architect working in the Netherlands in a small company called I4-YOU Business Solutions. And what I basically do is design and build solutions based on Microsoft 365 and Azure. So that's mostly on the productivity, collaboration, document management, that kind of thing. Streamlining customer processes. So, on any given day, I could create automation solutions or build business applications, design things with customers, things like that. So that's work. So aside from work, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I've got 2 kids. Very lovely, completely the family man here.
And you're also an MVP. And
yes,
you're also an MVP.
Yes, I'm also an MVP. That's not 1, not 2, but 9 days already. That's very important.
Highly experienced here. How to
yes. I've been bombarded with emails the last few days.
Yeah, well, you get used to that, and then you decide which of those are actually interesting. And of course, because the Ignite, for those who are listening and watching who are not MVPs do get early access on some of the announcements in the Ignite. So there's quite a few of those pre-meetings and all of that stuff happening. And it's like, which of these do I actually need to join? Well, none of them.
All of them. The first in your first year, you join all of them because it's so cool, right?
You can join all of them, but you don't have to. That's the thing.
So. Yeah. Like nobody's keeping track. Like, hey, so how many calls does MVP join? No. Yeah. We don't do that.
Now, the thing when I wanted to actually start first related on the Netherlands and being a Microsoft 365 architect there. You talked about the collaboration, and the reason why it's actually interesting is that typically, and this is nothing against other countries, but typically as we see the adaptation on the modern technologies and the latest products, we can always follow up the path from Netherlands and Scandinavia, and then the other countries follow. And this is actually kind of something which happened with the Microsoft 365 game adaptation and all of that. Netherlands and Scandinavia has always been the first, like in the head of the curve, and then you see what happens. Now, and that's an interesting discussion point. You are a Microsoft 365 architect in Netherlands. So what's the future for us? What's happening? Where's the demand? What kind of things are you actually doing? You talked about the collaboration. Is it Teams, SharePoint, Viva? What kind of things?
All of it. There's been a huge move to Office 365 in the Netherlands, I guess, in the last few years. So Teams has really blown up. SharePoint is really being used a lot. And Power Platform is also booming. So it's basically those 3 areas I think we are working on the most. And I think if you don't have a business in the Netherlands on those topics, and you are an IT company, you're really doing something wrong. So it's there's a lot going on, and everyone wants to use it. That's basically the thing here. Yeah. So that's the areas that we know, but of course the areas that we are experienced in and we are working on a lot. Viva, not so much as of yet, but people are sniffing out and getting the lay of the land there as well. So, some of the people who like to get in touch with the more modern techniques, the hip young guys, they like to sniff around that and start using it. I think. And for other large companies that we are the customers for us, they're coming along a little bit slower for those type of solutions.
Yeah, and it's the Viva is how would I put it? It's a bit of a complicated product as well, because it has so many modules, and some of the modules, or most of the modules, are not even GA'd at this point. So only a few of them are. So it's kind of a maturity of that setup is still. Well, it's getting better and better, but and it always takes at least 12 to 24 months to anything to catch on. So
yeah. Maybe another angle around that. So with the customers with whom you work, how do you see them deal with the whole thing with pandemic? The last two years, are they back in the office? Are they back to basically where they were in 2018? Or have they changed the way they work, and how does technology that we offer at Microsoft fit into that?
Well, I
no
think
no pressure answering this question. So.
well, of course, we've seen a huge move towards. Okay, I know all about this, so well, I think we've seen a huge move towards remote working. With the large companies, and then again, we've seen some companies partly move back. But I think the great thing that the COVID period has brought us is that there's a lot more openness to remote work. So I think we'll be somewhere in between and stay there. It's not. I don't think, as I see it, that it's going to be all back as it used to be. It will be in between, and a lot of companies will still offer the possibility of remote work, and they're still doing that as we speak. So but also I think a lot of companies are also, they also want to really keep in touch with their workforce, and so a lot of people are also just going back to the office. I mean, the roads in the Netherlands is a typical big problem here, because we're a very small country. And it's always busy, and it's almost as busy as it was before COVID. So I think that's also signifying a lot.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge. Of course, me and Waldek are a bit of an exception on this discussion, but of course, how do you get your employees committed on the company if you never see them? So and we talked about this one quite a few times in the past in the PnP Weekly. Is if I remember when I started in Microsoft quite a few decades ago, we basically sat on the office as a team. So I started as a Sharepoint consultant and working with customers, but most of the time we were actually sitting in the office with the team, and we're still in touch. A lot of the people I started working at that time quite a few years ago are still in the daily WhatsApp groups and all of that stuff because of that connection. And now, if you think about the pandemic and all of the remote work, which is great, it provides flexibility, but how do you feel connected? How do you build those connections with your coworkers and colleagues, because you never meet them? Now, I can't remember when I last time met you, Waldek, but I guess we have a pretty decent connection.
2018. I guess.
Yes, but it's interesting. So. The dynamics is different, right? So it's how are you feeling committed on the company and team if you never meet people? So
but
go on.
Yeah, well, that's why I think it's not getting back to how it were. It's not staying as it was during the pandemic. It's kind of moving in between. I mean, for me personally, I'm just traveling to the office again every day because I like to get connected and to stay connected and to meet people and to sit beside them while we solve things. Yeah. And that's still a possibility, luckily for us, when we're not doing remote work with Finland and the United States, etc. So.
But it is an interesting point, right? Because like I recall, like going back to extremes, I recall in the past I worked at a company where I think the company was 20 odd folks, and we would work in an open plan office, right? So we had like few big tables, and at some point for a project, we would like book a project table to basically have everybody related to project work on the same desk. Yep. Basically, in a way, and it's like that's a very much another extreme. Like even in the context of an open plan, you want everybody like really close. Whereas now we're like, well, my team spans from Hawaii to Australia. There is no single desk. There is no even like get to the office, because I can go to the office here and then I will still not see anybody from my own team.
Nobody knows who you are when you would tell them, right?
Well, that's not quite true. There are still some people who I know from the past, right? Because but it's very much that. Like you go there to meet folks with whom you will never work because they have different jobs and roles and they do different work, right? So it's very much this one extreme, sitting like making them sit at the same desk because they work on the same thing, to, well, you will get to meet people through a little box on your screen.
Yeah. But how do you deal with that? So I'm putting you and Martin, and actually this question also for Waldek. What would be the tips which comes to mind? How do you build that engagement with the team?
Martin first. I'm not putting you on the spot at all, unless you want to think.
And there's no right or wrong answer, but any kind of ideas. How do you build that relationship between people? And because of course, if you come as a new person and you work as a remote person, what could help? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's well for us in the Netherlands. I mean, we don't have connections with companies that are only remote, so it's not really the same for us, I think. But at least have a few meetings face to face. That's, I think, very important. You know, it doesn't have to be all week anymore. I mean, before the pandemic, we went to the customers and we just sat there at our desks. Our project, and we just sat there and did the entire project, and every day we went back and forth. So right now we don't need to do that anymore, but we need to go there once in a while, you know, like every week or every other week. So to keep in touch and to really keep to have this sense of connection in place. I think as long as we do that, then we'll be okay, I guess. And well, maybe at least have a very celebration after the project has been finished, you know, face to face, drink some beers together and do stuff like that.
Never forget about drinking beers. That's good.
Yeah, of course. It's,
I'll take notes. CLI offsite. We need to have an offsite for CLI to bond. Or actually a PnP team offsite. There you go.
Yeah, that's good. We'll take the plane, so you know, the private plane.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
We'll pick everybody up.
There was an MVP
right?
private plane, right?
We'll take a plane, pick up everybody at their home.
Yeah. We'll borrow the MVP private plane. It should
the MVP plane. No, there is no MVP plane. I think it is really twofold, right? Because on one hand, so I am in a place where I am on the receiving end of the stick, as also on the stick where basically I wield the stick. And with that, I mean, like, I am an employee at Microsoft, right? So I am a part of the team, and there is a manager that leads that team. On the other hand, in open source, in PnP Community, I lead with others the CLI project, right? So it's kind of twofold things. So on the receiving end, I think that it is really important that you because we don't see each other every day. Like in the past, you know, we would go to an office, and whenever you share something, you talk with folks. Like you basically look at a person and you see them nod, right? Basically, yes, I hear you, I understand, I follow. How do you replicate that asynchronously?
Yeah.
Well, we do this with emojis, the thumbs up, their reactions to things. So in other words, that really made me think the other day, if you lead a team, you need to mimic that. Like, what's worse that you can do? Like, I send an email, no reaction, and then I send another one, no reaction. It means like people don't care, don't listen, that is irrelevant. It kills the morale, right? So in other words, yes, it's really hard to stay on top of everybody in your team posts, but that's necessary because that's how you acknowledge, yes, I hear you, you're valuable, I hear your ideas, and sure, maybe we cannot do it all, maybe there's no tied action to it, but I hear you, acknowledge that, yes, you are there, you share things that, like, yeah, let's do something with that, right? So all the small things all things that we perceive as small, the reaction, the like, these are invaluable because that's how you build trust time and again.
The like is actually interesting, even in a larger scheme, which says the likes are free, but the one like can actually change a person's life for the positive.
Yes.
Because it's such it's such a subjective experience. Oh, somebody reacted. Oh my God! But for the person who's giving the like, well, it's just like it's an interesting thing.
Yes and no, right? Because like it doesn't come for free because like the person that gives a like needs to have deliberate action, and I think what you're trying to get at is that it doesn't seem like much. It almost seems like if I do a like,
encouraging because it's a
but it has
on the receiving side. Yes,
it
has the power
absolutely.
to change the world, which is the interesting thing.
Absolutely, but I think the reason why we don't see it that much is on the person that gives the like. It might seem like a trivial thing, like it's so small, it's irrelevant. Like people will. Well, actually, I cannot see that you read my email. I cannot see that. Like there is no way for me to be able to do that. So unless you nod with a like, a reply, like, hey, cool idea. Hell, maybe I know of this somebody else person who does this. Otherwise, I cannot know, right? So if you think about building the culture asynchronously, like that's one of the key things. Being then and recognize people and the things that they contribute to the group.
Communicate.
And what I would really like if teams would support adding your own custom emoji as a like reaction, because often every time you click the thumbs up button, it's always the same. Everybody uses thumbs up button. I want to use the hang loose sign or something else that's really personal. And that gives this extra touch.
Is this already public, Waldek? I did. We announced that we're heading there, so that's good. But internally, I guess we already have it, or we do have it, so which is good, because then you get a reaction of multiple different reactions on the same message. But that's actually really good. So and that's putting the persona in place because like is like, but then hang loose is a bit of a hey, woohoo. It's a bit of a different.
Yeah.
It's more personal and it gives this extra touch, I think, to the communications.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, it's the same way, in reality, there are a few folks who appreciate to be recognized by a pat on the back. There are people who want to be like put in a spot directly in the front of the whole group, like that person had a cool idea. There are people who hate that and they don't want to get anywhere near it. So it's very much on one hand, it is exactly as you say, the custom emojis and reaction allow you to communicate your persona across. Like I am that person who does that or who does, cool, dude. And also the other way, like there are folks who want to be recognized in the open or in private, right? But there has to be something. Like the worst thing you can do in an asynchronous collaboration is be quiet. Yes. That's killing. 100%. That is basically the beginning of the end.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah. And then as a team leader, as a manager, you need to adapt for the person so that the persons can actually feel valued. Yeah. Because, well, you're the manager anyway. Yeah. Now, let's just switch the gears a bit. Let's get back on Martin, on you. How did you get to be a Microsoft 365 architect? How is that like? I'm now a Microsoft 365 architect.
Well, when I grow up, I want to be an architect.
No. Well, I did want to do something with computers when I was young. But interestingly, when I started this education, which was a kind of IT education, and it was like you started the first year, and you would grow towards a certain stream, like business or IT, really the technical side, the programming side. And I started that the first year, and I grew towards the business side. and I disliked it. I really thought this is not what I want to do. But the other side was far too like a programmer, the real nerds, like
the math.
Really, yeah,
algorithms.
That was not my piece of cake as well. So I dropped out and I started to do something entirely different. I became a youth worker in a church, which I did an education for. So that was a really different thing, and I did it for a really long time. Like,
I have to say, that's precisely what I did when I was 15 to 20 as well. And so
really,
so it's Very cool. And that was, I even applied to be an official and professional youth worker. They luckily didn't hire me.
They likely didn't accept me, and that's another story.
I was apparently a bit more pushy than. So I still remember sorry for taking a sidetrack here, but okay. There was a test for getting the study that, and then there was a basically group of us, like 18 or 20-year-olds, and then I'm always adapting the situation, and then at some point, like, okay, let's start doing this. And apparently I was a bit too pushy because nobody was doing actually anything in the group exercise. And then at some point it's like, well, now we will make this happen, and you'll do.
Yeah.
That was a good thing. So that
they disliked your management style.
Exactly. But interesting. So because I did that for 5 to even, well, at least 5 years since a teenager, kind of at a bit older person in the camps, helping the younger to be there, not necessarily because
50
of the religion
years,
stuff,
the
but,
older person. What? You're a kid.
No, the other ones on the camp are 14. I was 15, 16. So you're basically helping them to adapt and being
very cool. So I started that. Well, I grew into it because I didn't know when I started the studies. I didn't know I wanted to become a youth worker. I just didn't know. I just started it, and let's see where it brings me. And I became a youth worker for 12 to 18. I did a lot of stuff there with kids from church, but also kids on the streets. Very cool time. I think I did it like 8 years, and then it became time to do something else. But I didn't want to do the same thing again. So it was like, okay, where am I going to? But it was a part-time. Yeah.
Logic of that. See, I'm coming from the same path.
Well, it wasn't really. I mean, it was a part-time job. So I was a part-time youth worker, so I did need to find something on the side, and I reached back into my older IT experience, and I started to do web development. And initially I did it with PHP and classic AHP, and then someone pointed me to .NET, and that really blew my mind. So it was like, when I started that, wow, this is awesome. I want to keep doing this, So I kept working with .NET. I became an Umbraco developer. So Umbraco is a content management system based on .NET. So I worked a lot with XSLT and stuff like that. And then came Razor scripts and et cetera. So I kind of grew into the .NET stack until I had to switch a job. And I sat down here with my boss, which wasn't my boss by then, but I knew him. And I was explaining to him that I wanted to leave the youth work field. And so I kind of said like a joke. So don't you have something to do for me? And he said, well, yes, we can think about it.
And here you are.
It's like, I almost did not have to apply.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
But that's actually kind of coming back on the youth worker and dealing with youth and different kind of people. That actually helps on, I would still say that my career as a consultant has a lot of, because of that, a lot of value because of that experience, because you learn how to deal with the people. Now, in my case, I was also a croupier in a casino and in the whatever nightclubs.
Dealing with way different kind of people.
Dealing with drunken people and still losing money and all of that. That was a bit of a different experience again, but learning to deal with different kind of people and reading people as well, because that helps as a consultant for sure. So and taking other people into account. So
absolutely, it gave me a lot of soft skills. Yes, and that's very valuable. And also a lot of speaking skills. I had to speak a lot for small groups, large groups. I spoke in front of 2,000 people. I just did that, but that's built me up as well. So that's
cool.
And if I would need to do that again, I would still be sweating before. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
am I going to do this? But still, I did it. I'm really proud of that. I just,
that's cool.
Basically, I'm an introvert, so I hate to be on stage, at least when it's about me. But happily, it's not always about you. So, yeah.
I would say I don't think that's never gonna go away, because I'm certainly have a massive imposter syndrome and an introvert as well. And then in the Power Platform conference like 3 to 4 weeks ago, there was 4,000 people in the room, and you're waiting on the stage on the background and getting there. And it's that funny kind of, well, it's been a few years.
Yeah.
But it's cool. No, it's not. It's cool. Yeah, no,
exactly.
It's not.
Exactly. So, but it's something which practice will help for sure on that.
I totally feel what you're saying, and if you do this very regularly, I think you can really get into it. Like get over it a bit. But I don't do that often enough for that experience to become second nature.
Yeah, sure.
But so I came from web development essentially into SharePoint, and then it was a very big shift, because the first thing I had to build was a public-facing website on SharePoint. So,
nice.
if you're coming from a .NET, Umbraco, Razor scripts into a public-facing website, I'm still curious why I stayed.
But, you're like, what? I cannot.
What's going on here?
Yeah, exactly.
But you're approaching SharePoint as a content management system, which it isn't, of course, and it's much larger and it's got a lot of extra features. It's a very interesting move. But then when Microsoft moved to add the add-in model, I can really remember you guys speaking about how to choose between the provider-hosted apps and the SharePoint-hosted apps and the auto-hosted apps. And this is when it started to get interesting for me, because I thought, okay, now I can use my web development techniques and just build a website and connect it to SharePoint. And it started to ring. That was really when it started to grow on me. And then moving towards SPFX, that really exploded. I mean, that was a very good move, I think. I personally, I really liked it as well.
Yeah.
Of course, the add-in model is kind of extinct, but still, the way it works is still being used, right? Because essentially, a Teams tab is also kind of a provider-hosted application, if you're thinking about it. Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely. So the techniques and models are still exactly the same, and it could be a provider-hosted application hosted in SharePoint now. So there's kind of multiple different dimensions on how we can do it.
Provider-hosted app hosted in SharePoint
for Teams.
So where do you host it exactly? On Azure.
Never in SharePoint. Yeah.
No, in that case, it would not be Azure. So it would be SharePoint hosted.
Oh, if it's provider-hosted, I can put it anywhere.
Well, sure, but provider could be SharePoint. That's what I'm basically saying. Right. From a Team's perspective, SharePoint is
right. I get you. I get your point.
Yeah. So with the auto-host app, they really disappeared very fast.
That one never went to GA, unfortunately. The idea was good. The problem was actually that we couldn't figure out how to do the cost management of that. So how could we invoice then the customers or partners on the amount of Azure usage which they would have. But the idea was really good. And those who do not know, that it was basically bundling Microsoft Azure applications to the add-in model, and so that when you deploy, we actually provision Azure pieces as well. Now, funny enough, that request is coming more and more. So it might be that that old kind of a thinking will come back that sooner or later in the new technologies. Because if you think about it, let's have the Microsoft Teams application. It's Teams manifest. Why wouldn't we be able to associate biceps files for Azure in that one? And then it would provision in the tenant, customer tenant, when you take that into a use the needed assets, and then serve stuff from there. If it's not SaaS hosted ISV application. So technology is, I think, that's a good example of a, let's say, how would I put it, pendulum, or technology is evolving and then always coming back on at some point. Somebody comes back and says, guess what, stupid monitor, stupid screens, and then server-side hosting. I've heard this first time back in 80s or whatever. So
the principles are the same, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the implementation is different.
Exactly.
I'm glad that SharePoint moved away from using the old add-in, the client IDs and secrets, and it is being deprecated. But idea, the principle is still valid.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. But then now SPFX is with the modern technology, is aligned with web stack development, which is good, rather than having, is it proprietary tech or ways of doing implementation, which is always a bit of a bummer. Now, at the same time, we need to acknowledge that Power Platform is that kind of a solution, so that they have their own dedicated way of doing things. So it's not a kind of based on industry standards. They have their own programming language, even though it's not programming. Right? It's no code.
They say so, but
low code programming.
Yeah, to a customer, it still feels like programming. I mean, I needed to explain.
Well, I mean, the moment you start seeing people build in Power Apps like whole physics engine, and like, dude, like I couldn't do that in anywhere else, and you're building that in Power Apps. That's programming.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Well, now it's the same. Well, that's kind of also the evolution of things. Why do people keep using SharePoint lists for data storage? Because, well, they didn't know anything else.
Simple. Because it's simple.
Yeah,
use a UI in there.
Yeah, and then you hit the 5,000 item limit because,
Yeah, you need to take that into account. Yeah.
No, you can store million. What do you mean? We're saying that you can store millions of items in a list.
You can.
So there you go. What's the issue with that then?
Never mind.
Yeah. That's always something to consider, the 5,000 limit.
But it's
changing gears from SharePoint SPFX. You became an MVP.
Yeah.
How did that come? What was your way towards it? Because like you don't get it for just doing your work in a way. Like it takes special kind of effort and work. Was it deliberate? Was it coincidence? Was it something that came to be over time? Or was it something that you always, aspired?
Yeah. What would be the tips of getting the MVP?
Yeah.
How would I get an MVP status?
Well, you can't.
That was short.
Yeah. Well, I did not really aspire to it because I thought it was unreachable for me. But what I did want to do was inspire other people. This also always, I think, something that's always also coming from my background in church work. But I really want to inspire people, help people out, and that can become something extra you do on the side besides your work. So I started out, I think, in 2021, just writing blogs because I thought, I want to do that. And I also want to give something back because I'm using PnP PowerShell tools like every day for the last 8 years. So I wanted to give something back as well, not be the consumer all the time. But I started that and I started doing that. And soon I realized that there was a lot to gain for me as well in doing that, because when you explain things to others, you really need to dive a step deeper than normal. You really would need to know what you're talking about. So you do a little extra in research, and that also helps you again into understanding how the solutions work and figure how they work together. So this kind of it grew on me, I started doing some work on the CLI repository, the CLI from Microsoft 365, and to be honest, that's a funny thing. I had not even used the CLI for Microsoft 365 before that moment. I just thought, let me just contribute something somewhere. I was all about PnP PowerShell, but then I think Aldejan Schot sent this tweet about 17 good first issues. Do you want to do something as well?
Those are really good, encouraging.
Really good tweets.
Yep.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, let's try that. So I started out, and the fun thing about it is that it's a combination of a few things I really like. It's scripting. So because I like scripting, it's just something I use so much. I really love it. And it's the code base is client-side coding, right? It's a Node.js app built in TypeScript, which I really love as well. So it's like two things that I really like. And that's the fun thing about contributing. You can just do things you really like, instead of in your work, you also have to do sometimes do things that it's not really what you like. I mean, I had to install SharePoint on premises a few times, which is not really what I like to do.
Nobody likes that.
Next finish. How hard can it be, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Yes.
Fortunately, you could write scripts as well to do that. So
sure.
Yeah. But this is like in contributing, it's like do things that you really like, scripting, TypeScript, client-side coding, and it kind of grew on me, and I continued doing it. And then Waldek asked me to be a maintainer, and then from then on, things just went automatically. It's so still I did not expect to become a Microsoft MVP, but then again, when things got a little bit out of hand, I thought, well, maybe I've got a chance to become one, and I would like it. It's a real honor to be recognized for what you do, and it gives you a lot of extra opportunities and benefits to learn and to help others and to grow as a person and as a professional. That's basically how I got there.
So let's recap. What would be the 3 tips to get started and to get the MVP status? Anything on your mind immediately from just elaborating on what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I would say just start giving without expecting something in return. That's, I think, the primary thing. Forget about it for a moment. Forget about becoming an MVP. Just start to give and to help others and to reach out, and that in the end that will be recognized. If you and of course, what's also important is just don't give inside this. There's a large black box of where you can give, but you can also give in the right places. Like things like PnP, the PnP initiative is a very good place to start, because it's very organized. There's a lot of places where you can give something. So choose a place that's really smart, to contribute to. Then it's easier to get recognized. I think the PnP, I have to explain that a bit. I think we're doing a good job of acknowledging people and then getting people recognized on their contributions, and that's not necessarily what happens in all of the open source projects. So it's not just about having, hey, it's in GitHub, we do a welcome pull request. Yes, but do you really do that? How do you acknowledge that incoming those contributions? So so you really have to pick the right places. I think that's a wise thing. So that's 2. I don't know a third. Just put your best leg forward. No. Attitude. That's all. The right attitude.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And encouraging other people. Well, the positive attitude is always good, and we always welcome also feedback, which would constructive negative feedback as well. So, but that's just to call out. It's not just all positives and everything works. Of course, for us, it's super important as a Microsoft to know where we can improve as well, but in the right way. Communication. So
right. Yeah.
Cool. I think we are hitting the timings. Anything interesting what's happening this week? I have to call out. There's a really cool looking designs on back of your screen wall. Seems to be SharePoint or SPFX embedded in Teams. That's a pretty cool looking stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our company is a Valo partner. So we do a lot of things with that for a long time already. Yeah. And this is, part of our portfolio. So creating intranets that really work for people to communicate to their organizations. So this is, based in Teams, of course, and SharePoint. Yeah, that's just one of the main pillars of our work. So this and document management and migration scenarios, getting the data from the Google Cloud, for example, into the Microsoft Cloud or from a file share. Yeah.
But what's happening this week? Anything interesting? What's on the top of mind?
For this one, well,
in general, what's happening?
There is this small event, starts with an I. And with night.
You mean like, okay, yeah, right.
In general, what's happening this week?
Okay, yeah.
Not on Valo, but it's are there. What are you, any interesting projects or anything what you're working on right now? And
let's see what I'm working on. Well, I'm helping a colleague get a migration in place. I'm starting to work on a very big application from a customer that he wants to be integrated with SharePoint primarily as file storage, but it's it's a very important integration for them. This kind of things, well, a lot of things. I forget it. I'm forgetting. Yeah, whatever. I'm always busy. That's the key thing. I'm always busy doing things.
That's
right
a positive thing as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, let's go quick round. What anything on top of your mind this week? And of course, Martin is doing
Ignite,
and CLI stuff, of course. And
yes.
Ignite obviously happens on. Is it from Wednesday to Friday?
Yes. Correct. Then we are about, so folks from my team are about to do a Teams app camp, right? So if you have an existing app and you think about like, how can I bring it to Teams? Because if you bring an existing work app to Teams, that gives you the ability to bring it to where folks are, making it easier to access, infuse it with like basically bring the data from that app into Teams so that they can more easily work, right? So if you think about like, how would that work? Because oftentimes when we think about Teams apps, it's all about start creating new app, but there's a bunch of apps that all of us use for work. How would you bring them to Teams? So they will be coming soon. I think that was off the top of my head, October the
20th. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Right. So there will be dedicated event where you will be able to learn how you can bring existing app to Teams. What does that mean? What do you need to take into account and so forth? So really, if you are interested in that, awesome place to learn. So that is 1. 2. We mentioned already a few times the CLI, right? The CLI for M365, and we've been working on it for a few years. It turns out that next month we're turning 5.
Right.
So we're thinking about a birthday party with some kind of geeky or funny stories or whatever, something, but basically available for anybody to join. Like we're thinking about the European morning time. So yes, we will not be able to welcome everybody. On the other hand, wherever you live in the world, you're welcome to join us at the time. So we hope that we will be able to.
Drinks are on you.
Right? Sorry.
Drinks are on you, right? So.
Yes, absolutely. You can have all the drinks you want on us as long as you bring them by yourself.
Yep.
Right. So we're thinking about that, and specifically for this week, I think this week is more of an internal facing work, right? So if you think about my work, it's like a pendulum. It's like 1 week is more external facing, the other one is internal, and it goes up and down. So I think this week is more internal facing. Although one thing that I wanted to mention the other day, I wrote an article because we often think like, how can we bring more people to build on M365, right? We have a bunch of stuff to offer. There is like, I don't know, 20 different types of apps, maybe even more you can build. Like you can build bots and tabs, you can embed things inside M365 or connect M365 to your external app. So how can we reach more folks with that? Because it's cool, right? I mean, we have really active group that helps everyone, helps them learn. So the other day I tried to see like, can we publish an article on site that we don't own at Microsoft, like basically external site, right? So I got to publish an article on Free Code Camp, which is a site that is really heavily used by the dev world at large, but not folks who build on Microsoft, right? So like from the Microsoft side, if you look at all of the articles that they have, you can probably count them on fingers of single hand, right? So I got there, and it's surprising how much attention it got already. So it's just like one of the very first articles about M365, and it's like people seem to be interested in that. So I think that might be, a cool way for us to explore more if there is, if we can reach folks to whom we don't talk otherwise, right?
Yep.
I saw that article. Very good. Yeah.
What do you do there? You are our.
Oh, well, I saw your tweet, so I just clicked on it.
There you go. Yeah, fair enough.
That's how it works. And then quick round from my side. I think the Viva Home announcement, which happened 2 weeks ago, is taking some space and time. So we do a lot of internal planning on how do we now start pushing the Viva all up here and there. Because obviously the Viva is a big part of the Microsoft 365 and Teams platform and the future offering channels and all of that. So we need to do a bit of a internal planning and restart of that. And SharePoint Framework 1.16, I guess the new version is coming up. Not going to say. So
a Wednesday. It's going to be on a Wednesday.
But 1.16, one more beta at least, and then I guess we'll go then to GA after that. So, but there's a lot of work to be now done because there's a React version updates happening in the product of SharePoint to 17, and then that's having a trickle effect for developers and catching up on all of the technology. And so, and there's always some pain points as well. Luckily, I'm not personally responsible of solving all of those things. There's a smarter group of people in the engineering who are working on that.
Awesome, yeah.
But it's good to get a latest version. It's the classic. Why can't we use the latest version of this and that and that? Yeah. We're trying to get there as fast as possible. So
yeah,
it's scale, right? Like people really not often appreciate the scale of things only after they are exposed to the scale themselves. And it's like when you work on a project, you build something for, I don't know, 3 months, give it even a year. That's nothing. Yes, you can build a bunch of stuff in a year, but then you're done and you move away from it. Try maintaining things for 3 years or 4 years with all the deprecations and dependencies and the whole chain, and one thing doesn't work with another, and then the thing changed, and we don't use gulp and grunt, but we use barp and fart, and you're like, really?
True. Well, that's one of the key challenges. Obviously, in SharePoint frameworks, you can still all of the applications which created with SharePoint version 1.0, which G8, what was it, February 2017, 5 years ago, they're still working in production. And they have to be working in production. So the
question is, would you be able to add anything to it? Well, maybe on a VM, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So can you modify that or add something to that project? No, not necessarily. But whatever is deployed already in the customer deployments, they just cannot break. And that's a huge engineering task and tax to actually deal with. So, because of course we cannot go and say for customers that, by the way, this code, you need to recompile them and update them to the latest version, which says, well, but they don't even
you need to
necessarily
update
have access on the code.
Three months.
Yeah, that's not a solution. Anyway, anyway, thank you, Martin, for joining. Really cool to catch up and interesting discussions around your past as well. So congratulations on getting the MVP. That's day number 9. From day number 10, when this is out, so when we kind of release the episode. But thank you, Martin. Thank you, Waldek. We'll jump then to the weekly articles with Waldek to cover them through. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
And here we go. Thank you, Martin. One more time. Thank you. Really good to have you on the show, and congratulations, like 7th time already in this show, for getting the MVP status. That's pretty cool. And thank you for helping on understanding also on how to get the MVP status. So what does it actually imply? And one of the things which we always try to remind people that the objective should not be getting the MVP status and then be like, now I'm done.
Rule 1 of getting the MVP status is not wanting to get the MVP status.
Yeah, it should be more like a acknowledgement of the things what people are doing. So that's a better way of getting acknowledged and then automatically renew it, because if it's part of your work to share your knowledge and publish things and share information, then that's what the MVP program is all about. So rather than being just a tick box on the, yes, I got it, done, move on. So, but good way of telling that. I'm watching your face, Waldek.
Yes, I'm trying to say, yes, there is some matter to it.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you understood what I was trying to say. That is already a good start. Let's jump on the weekly articles. So let me share my screen and we'll go through them from there. So let's start with the Microsoft Teams blog. So last week we went through already that there's a blog post with SharePoint, Viva, OneDrive, and all of that stuff. What's happening in Ignite? And this week, Maria Figueroa published a similar kind of guidance for Microsoft Teams, which is calling out the different sessions. And of course, even though we tend to do this messaging in a silos, a lot of this stuff is not just about the teams. It's all about the Microsoft 365 experiences all up, but then watching from that or addressing that from a team's perspective. So, but a lot of cool sessions are coming up in the Microsoft Ignite. So please do check out AKMS team session, and that's a PDF file which is then focusing only on the teams things. But there's a lot of other sessions as well. So if you go to the ignite.microsoft.com, you can find all of the different sessions which are available. Now, the second thing which we had was a SharePoint Roadmap pit stop on September 2022.
Every month, yes, every month we get summary. What's new in SharePoint, OneDrive, Viva? I reckon like it's a pretty broad overview. And again, September overview gives us another glimpse into what is new, what has changed, what is shipped, basically to help you stay up to date and embed that in your work and basically give it a place in solutions you build.
Yep, absolutely. A lot of cool stuff across the different features and capabilities, and so it's a lot of features. And even though it calls out SharePoint Roadmap, it's not just about SharePoint in this articles. There's a lot of like related technologies getting called out in here as well. Now, because SharePoint is behind a lot of that stuff, but anyway, so it's SharePoint. No, anyway, so on this one is good article. I was actually involved in writing this and reviewing that. So getting a bit more clarity on the Viva Connection, new Viva Connection desktop experience. So we're rolling out a new modern experiences, which is called Microsoft Viva Home, which will be then the default startup page for people. So really focusing more like me focused, and then it's going to list out all of the different Viva modules which you have licensed into, depending on your tenant and depending on a person. And then of course it has extensibility options as well. So as a tenant area, the administrators or the designers who design the experience, they can configure what are the capabilities and to be visible to which person, and we can target the cards and all of that in the experience as well. And you can of course build your own cards, which is really cool. So or take into cards to use from other partners and ISVs. So it's a really flexible experience for sure. And with SharePoint Framework. SharePoint Framework is the technology of doing that. Now, by the way, one thing to call out, we are looking into having, even though if you have configured the Viva Connection already, and you don't want to have this kind of the first step experience as the Viva Home, you can actually configure to bypass directly to the Viva Connection experience as it is already in your tenant. So that's a configuration setting. And a lot of other options are being clarified here in Q&A, FAQ questions in here. Now, we also had this one. So Teams App Camp is a training package happening on October 20th. What is this all about, Waldek?
So it's all about if you have an existing app and you want to bring it to Teams, because the benefits of that is basically you will make it easier for people to use your app, right? Because that app will be available where they already are, and you will be able to combine some of the context that they have from discussions that they have on Teams with the data that belongs to the app. So if you wonder, I have an app, I want to bring it to Teams, where do I start? This is the perfect place for you to join and see that virtually. I was just about to say in person. See for yourself virtually. See for yourself virtually.
Yep.
How would you go about it, right? So what does that mean? What are the different steps? And it's more than that, because the first step is to bring the app to Teams, make it Teams aware, and so forth and so on. But then we will also go into other areas like how would you expose that app? Because imagine that you are ISV and you want to sell this app, right? How can you expose it to the Teams store so that you can expand your reach? So in other words, it's a very interesting topic, very interesting to both or to all SIs, enterprise devs, and ISVs. So if you build apps for work, this is the one webinar training camp you don't want to miss.
Yep, Absolutely, and I think it's only 2 hours, 1 hour actually. So it's a good, not a massive time allocation. And there are exercises and other videos then follow up afterwards as well. So really cool. Thank you, Bob and Rabia, for setting this one up. Super cool stuff. Now, next week we also published a article in the developer platform blog around link unfurling public preview in Outlook, and this is really, I think the video explains that in the best way. So if we have an external application, in this case Northwind's database or application, we can take the link, and as we paste that link in the message, it will actually have additional context around that target link, which is really cool scenario. So you don't necessarily need to again move away from the context of work, because you're writing the stuff in email, but then that resolves additional features. And in here, we can see that it can actually even have operational features, which is really cool. So basically, you don't have to go to the application. You can already operate in that link unfurling experience in certain level. Super cool stuff. Now, we also had an article related on, or update on the documentation around universal actions.
Exactly. So we shipped a new feature for search-based message extensions, and now you can use the universal actions. So I guess that was an announcement from last year build, where we announced universal actions, meaning the same actions that they were the same way across the different locations where you can use adaptive cards, being like Teams and Outlook. And apparently you can now use the same format of it in the adaptive cards in messaging extension, meaning there's one less place for you to have to write separate code, which is always good.
Unify, as reuse the same skills, which is really cool. Now, something what we also wanted to call out, we're moving to this weekly, communications related on always what's happening from a Microsoft 365 platform community perspective. These are typically released on Thursday, Friday, the previous week, and then we call out all of the upcoming community calls and what's actually happening and what are the demos and agenda items in there. So this week, as an example, we have the Microsoft 365 platform call happening again Tuesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time. We have the Microsoft Office add-ins monthly community call happened on Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and then we have the Thursday 7 a.m. Pacific time cycle as well, and this time it's the Microsoft 365 Power Platform Development Community call happening there. In this blog post, we'll also call out, and adaptive cards is happening on Thursdays as well. It is a quite busy week, actually. And we also call out the new videos and the new blog posts in the PnP or the Microsoft 365 Platform Community blog, so in the same thing. So having this kind of weekly summary of all of the different assets, trying to make it easier for people to follow up on what's happening, and also upcoming events as well. So should be, hopefully that's useful. Now, we also had a really interesting article from Thomas Poisek.
Exactly. Like one thing that you see a lot is you want to be able to rate things, whether that's document, a link, a meeting quality, anything, right? Because you want to express how valuable it is or how meaningful. Right, and one way to do that we see a lot, the pattern for that is to have a control with stars. So you would give 1 star to something that could have been improved, 5 stars to something that you would do, or you would assign to something that was excellent. Right, so here you get the ability to do that in a Power App. Is that Power App or is it? Yes, it is, right? Then that is a Power App. Oh no, adaptive cards. Sorry,
adaptive cards.
Like,
yes.
You're scrolling. Yes. I'm seeing a Power Automate flow, and I'm instantly going, no. So how you would build a star rating control in adaptive card, which is really cool, because where you can use adaptive cards. Well, we just heard about messaging extensions, Outlook, Teams, web apps, your custom apps. So they are everywhere, and they give you. Exactly, right? And they give you this ability to have, you build an adaptive card once, and you can use that across many different apps, devices, platforms. So this is a really great way for people who maybe aren't, design gurus to have a good looking UI that works consistently across the board. So this is a really cool way to think about implementing rating in your apps.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thomas, on that one. And then we have a new article from Louis Fries related on how to build your Power Apps that don't look like Power Apps. And this is the part 4 on that series, talking discussions about the material. The numbers are really hard for me.
3 is the new 4, right?
Wow, 3 is the new 4. 3 is the new 4. Wow. Focus.
Because
focus.
1 is none and 3 is 4.
Yes. Yeah, because 3 is yes. 0 is the first. So because its arrays start from 0, so therefore 3 is 4. So
yes,
makes perfect sense.
Spoken like
anyway, so I've done my fair share for development. Anyway. But really, part 3 on how we should do a more beautiful looking Power Apps experiences, and there's a really nice control actually, which scales nicely on the context and expands itself as you're writing things. So awesome stuff from Luis on that one. Now we also had an article from you related on how to build your first Microsoft 365 application in 10 minutes.
Exactly.
God, is it so easy?
The idea is, well, yes, actually it can be. Right, so oftentimes when you hear that you would build an app on a platform, right, it's hard, right, because there are quite a few things you need to learn because you're building on something else. Meaning you need to know the vocabulary, you need to probably know about auth, the tool chain, and many other things. So the learning curve is typically pretty steep. One thing that we often miss is that you don't need to know about all of it up front. You can start small and learn from there. So with this article, my attempt was, hey, how can we basically get to this time to F5? F5 being you press F5 on the keyboard, your app launches, and a piece of code you wrote actually runs, and you see a working app. And it might not seem that it does much, but it really, if you think about it, it gives you all the basics you need, because in this app, you will let users sign in with their Microsoft 365 account to your app.
Yep.
You will call the Microsoft Graph, being the API, to let your app access data and insights on Microsoft 365, and you will show the data in your app, and you will even create or you will register your app with the Microsoft identity, right? So you will do all the different things that you have to do for every single app, but there are easy ways to do it, right? So you'll be able to do all of that to have a really working app from 0 to a working app in under 10 minutes.
Yep, absolutely. Really, really cool. Cool stuff. Thank you, Waldek, on that. Now, Andrew Connell from Voitanos had also an interesting article related on how to use React hooks within your SharePoint framework solution. And React hooks is something which was introduced in React 16.8, and it's kind of a bit of a different way of structuring your code. And of course, it's a matter of an opinion. Some people prefer React hooks, some people prefer the older way of doing things. But AC is basically walking through how would you adjust the default SharePoint framework solution, which you get from your generator, to be React hooks based. And there's also a video related on this. So there's an article, and then there's a video associated to this article. I know that there's a video. Where's the video? Somewhere in the video. There's a link to the video.
It's on the right-hand side. It's on the right-hand side.
Yes. What's this
video?
video?
The video on this article?
There we go. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for working as my math guidance and also my eyes. That helps. Well, so. Now, Appy had a cool article as well related on, I guess, CLI. Is it
notified for PnP updates? I think this is more about trying to stay on top of everything that we do across PnP, right? Because we do a lot. There is CLI, there's PowerShell, there's provisioning framework. We have a blog, we have events, we have sharing is caring sessions. So there is a lot. And as for now, like while we try to do our best to communicate across the board what's coming where and what we do across the board, you might want to have a way to stay on top of that in the way you like. So basically, stay up to date on your own terms.
Yep.
And Albert Jan Schot shows you how you can build a Power Automate flow or Logic app, because it's kind of a similar thing, to basically bring those updates to you. And then you can push it to Teams. You can send yourself a message to Outlook. You can write it maybe on your wall if you happen to have a big screen. That is all up to you, right? So it shows the power of how you can use low-code tools to tie it into some events on the internet system, and bring them to you. Really cool way.
Thank you, Abby, on that one. Now we also had a article from Marcin Wojciechowski from Valo Solutions related on patch message handler in the .NET. So how would you do that, and what does it actually mean, and how does it actually work within your code? So if you're writing a .NET code, really good technical insights on how would you make these things happen, and an example code as well. Again, really great example of an article which walks through the different options and how you can do that, and then provides you code which you can use the starting point to adjust for your use case as well. Really cool stuff. Thank you, Marcin, on that one. Thank you. Now, then we have Peter Wenstra with a new article related on PDF function.
Yes, exactly. So TLDR, if you need to create a PDF in Power App, check out this.
There's a native feature available for it. You just need to enable that because it's currently an upcoming feature. Now, Agnes Molnar had a good end user kind of a focused article related on the scope of Microsoft Search organizational current site and what does that actually mean. So if you do a search in a SharePoint, because you have the files in a SharePoint, a lot of your files are typically in SharePoint. What does that current site and global setting in the search control actually means, and how does that change the behavior within the system? That's a really good article on that. Then we had the weekly update related on 365 Message Center show with Daniel and Daryl.
And this time around, they pop out one idea, which is the ability to pop out a calendar in Teams. So in other words, imagine that you chat with somebody and you want to plan a meeting.
Yep.
In the past, you need to move away from the chat. You go to the calendar, create an invite, then need to get back to your chat. But what if you need to, discuss things like timings and agendas? It's a lot of work to go back and forth. Well, now apparently in Teams, you can pop out the calendar. So you can go to calendar, create new invite, pop it out, and have it side by side with your chat. So that way you can more easily, do two things at a time when it makes sense.
Absolutely. This amazing scenario where you can have multiple windows open at the same time. That's mind-boggling.
Oh, yes, because the OS is called Windows in plural. It's not one window. You can have multiple windows. Yes. Even on Mac OS, you can have multiple windows.
But it's not called Windows. Oh my God, no. Just to recap, yes. The Message Center show is a great show from Daniel and Daryl, walking through one of the latest announcements in a weekly basis. And one thing what I noticed actually here, which is actually interesting as well, so there's a roadmap announcement that finding time adding is moving as a native feature called scheduling pull, which is actually really cool. Finding time is a great feature when you have multiple people trying to schedule the time when to have a meeting which works for them. So. If you can,
with external folks for whom you don't have
access to the calendar.
Access to calendar,
That's true. Now, Paolo Pialorsi had an updated or weekly video on his PSS Tech Bites around the Pmp provision schema, the latest version. So there's a work being done to get a new features available and what's available, how and what are the new features and capabilities what you can control using the PnP provisioning schema. What's actually interesting around this one, the provisioning schema, what is this PnP provisioning schema? Well, that's the engine behind of the Pmp templates. Now, what are the Pmp templates? It's the open source templating engine, which, by the way, we saw a quick stamp in here. So, for example, the cultural site template, Hispanic Heritage Month, has been built with that. But even by a coincidence, there's a video around the Power Platform Hub, which is a new hub and a template released by the Power Platform.
That was really smooth.
And related
almost
on Power Platform.
As if you practiced it.
Yes, 10 times. But this is really cool, a site template, which is designed to have this kind of a Power Platform experience, the latest news and assets around the Power Platform within your tenant. And that's actually built using the PnP provisioning engine as well. So you use PnP PowerShell to provision that from command line. But it's a great feature, and April is walking through the different scenarios, different features, what's available, how to install that, and all of that within this video. So thank you, April, on that. And then the last thing was from a Shen Yang.
Yes, everything you need, everything you need, not everything you need to know, it's everything you need to know. So the title says everything you need to build a model-driven Power App. In the context, says everything you need to know to build that model-driven power app. Yeah, so it's TLDR. It's again within 40 minutes, so a bit longer form description, because there's really a lot you can do in model-driven power apps. And Shane walks you through it, like, how do you start? How do you structure Dataverse tables to store data? How do you build the relationship? So all the different things related to mechanics of a model-driven power app.
Yep.
Basically, watch this, and after 40 minutes, you will know enough to build a good model-driven power app.
Yep, really, really cool. Thank you, Shane, on that. Now, that's it for this week. We already went what's new and latest happening within this week, together with the discussion with Martin. Anything else?
So long, and thanks for all the fish.
And which book for us that again? So
Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy.
Yeah, Douglas Adams, for those who do not know.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you for this one. The film wasn't too bad either, but it wasn't at the same level as the book.
Books were way better. Books were hilarious.
You cannot actually do that kind of a film. The film was good, but it wasn't. The book is just unbelievable. So
yes.
it's really, you cannot make that as a proper movie. So it's just impossible. Anyway, so and next week we kind of talk about the top 10 movies coming from Bollywood.
Bollywood. That's okay. I'm interested.
Do your research. Do your research.
Do your research. I actually hope to be able to learn more about it. Now you're volunteering me to do my research. Like, that's not how it works.
Right, cool. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back with a new show within a week. So please remember #PnP Weekly. Thanks everybody, and thanks Martin. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.